Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Natalie Marr, and I am here to help you learn to love your story. Welcome back, everybody. I'm really excited. I am putting this together a few weeks ahead of when I post it. And I have to tell you that I'm like sitting in my car, coming up with ideas, wishing I could write them down fast. I'm so excited about this idea of getting to meet with you on a weekly basis and just, shoot the shit, really. I really want to make a difference in the world. And I know that that sounds so cliche, but I've been through some things in my life. And more than that, I have sat with people who have been through things that are tremendously difficult. And while this is not therapy, this is meant to help kind of give you the gift of all of this information that's been swirling around in my head for years, partly because of my profession, partly because of my own personal life. So other people can just pick up and go from there, right? Like, it shouldn't have to be that hard. I want to make these kinds of concepts, accessible and have the concepts of them be stuff that feels like stuff that you can understand and that you could, impart wisdom on people that you love, that you could use in your own life, that you can, boots hit the ground, man. Like, let's get this stuff going. And so many of us won't go see a therapist for lots of different reasons. We could sit and wax eloquently about it's stigma, it's this. I think for many of us, it's literally accessibility. And sometimes that accessibility isn't even financial, although many times it is. I think the accessibility of it is, how do I find somebody? Who do I see? When do I go? What do I do? Finding a fit. I mean, I could talk for hours about how it's like a dating app when you go on Psychology Today and start looking at different therapists that are in your area. They all have their own profile. And you're like, let me try this one. Let me try that. I'm going to communicate back and forth with them. Oh my God. It's a trip, man. So for all those reasons, I am so excited. Welcome back. I want to be here with you. My name is Dr. Natalie Marr. I am a clinical psychologist by trade. I have started a blog, vlog, basic, place for women in midlife to go on my website, learntoloveyourstory.com, where I want to help women step into the best part of their life, to be quite honest. And I know that when we hit midlife, that what many of us are reckoning with as women is this idea that we have set aside our dreams, that we have, limited ourselves, not because we wanted to be harsh on ourselves necessarily. More often, it's because we wanted to do right. We wanted to do the right thing, to be the good girl, to, do the things that were being asked of us. So we became parents, we became, coworkers and partners and community members that are givers. And as I talked about in my last video, Doctors Amelia and Emily Nagowski to call this idea the human giver syndrome. I love this because it is kind of sick. Like, it's very codependent driven behavior where our worthiness in this world comes from the hustle of how well we give and care give to others. And while there is some really beautiful things about service, I mean, hello, I just talked for, 2-3 minutes about why I'm making this podcast. And it's all because I want to serve other people. There's something really beautiful about that. And there is something that really gets lost in translation when we aren't told and taught to honor ourselves. So today's subject, I wanted to talk about this concept of personal agency and why it is at the core of everything that I teach anywhere that I am, in my private practice, on learntoloveyourstory.com, here with you guys, anywhere I'm blabbing stuff out into the universe. There's a real core kernel of it that comes from this idea of personal agency. And some of us, I don't think, really have wrapped our heads around what that is. No surprises. It isn't something that we really actually call out and teach. We do teach about being independent. We do teach about being an individual. And there's some elements of personal agency that are, that also have those elements in them as well. And that isn't what it really is. And so I want to dig in as a clinical psychologist. Remember, this isn't therapy. Please see all of the things where I warn you, you aren't getting therapy here, but you are going to get education from a therapist. And I want to give us some education on this concept of personal agency because it is so key to any kind of change, growth mindset, to any kind of ability to pivot and deal with the transitions of life, with grief and loss, any of that. Personal agency is this core piece that you really have to be able to identify with. And I recently also wrote a blog on this concept because what I have recognized, so I'm writing a book right now as I develop this podcast and some other things. It's been the long goal of mine to write a book. So as I've started to write the book, what I keep noticing is that there is a very feminist vein in what I'm doing. No surprises. If you have listened, read, done anything, watching me, whatever, you've probably picked up on I have a little bit of a feminist tinge. But I wanted to kind of specify a little bit more what I mean by this. I really aspire to the kind of feminist philosophy that Bell Hooks writes about. And what it is this idea that we all have equal worth in the world. And that equanimity, not equality necessarily, but equanimity is what we're actually after in feminism. So all real, true feminists in this vein, as Bell Hooks would put it, are humanists. What we really are looking for is a celebration of life, of individuality, of diversity. I don't need to be same. Same actually is very invalidating. Same, like I'm equal. I could have the same job. I can do the same things. I should have equal, ability to do all things as all male peoples in this world. This kind of old whitewashed version of feminism really kind of misses that mark. And I'm not saying that all feminists that, have more of that white feminism tinge to them don't have good hearts too. I think all of these things come from places where internalized oppression has not yet seen the light of day, meaning we are actually acting out ideas of patriarchy without knowing that we're acting out ideas of patriarchy. And so this idea of let's be equal rights, sometimes gets shoved in a way that dishonors this individuality and diversity that we all have. And I want us to understand that truly in this vein of feminism, what we're talking about is that all humans have equal amounts of worth and beauty and design that they bring to this world. And when we do not equally honor that worth, equally honoring the worth being equanimity, then we are isming all over the place. We are, devaluing some and valuing others because they meet a certain construct, and not because we are honoring the true value of either of those things. And in fact, equanimity honors, all sides of this gender biased kind of idea. We're not, non-binary, trans, folk, everybody is in this design honored because really what we're talking about is humanism. It's about being a human. It's about seeing your individuality. It's about really honoring who and what you bring to this world. And when we all get in a collective kind of honoring that kind of thing, that's where the juices flow. And that is really what's at the core of a lot of what I'm doing is this influence of that kind of equanimity-based feminism where I want to see the diversity. I want to honor the diversity. I want to see the individuality. I want to be in a world where we all understand it's pretty amazing, but there's nearly 8 billion of us on Earth and not one of us is the same. Not one. That's pretty remarkable when you think about it. And it gets even more wiggy when you start to think how many billions came in the millennia before us. Not one of them is like any one of us on Earth right now, or we're like any one of them before them, right? And that we still are going into the future billions and billions more of us for many more, hopefully millennia, will be on this little planet hurtling around in space, wrapping itself around the sun. Well, oh my goodness. So when you think about that and you think about what individuality and the worth of just this one thing that is this unique, that has only been here this one time and only will ever be this way, this time here. Oh my God. Like, it's so exciting when you start to think about it. And yet we have this very homogenous society. And I think it's been a reflexive response, in part to the uncertainty and the ambivalence and the just like we don't know what to expect is coming in our future. And that's scary. I mean, that brings about threat for us. And so there has been some safety in being sane. There has been some safety in being in your tribe, being in your community, and looking like your community and looking like your tribe and feeling good. And so, underlining this is some biologically driven reasons why, I see a white face and I feel more comfortable. It's been genetically, epigenetically over time. This is the kind of thing that your biology does to keep you safe. So if I'm with the people I literally look like, I feel safer because biologically that's been an adaptive skill over time. But in this world where there are so many faces anywhere, everywhere on the internet, whatever, that no longer actually serves us. Our biologically driven abilities no longer serve us in this realm and actually have served against us because they fuel things like culturisms and racisms and genderisms and, all the isms, all the ageisms, all the things. And of course, then also gets exploited by a patriarchal capitalistic society gone awry. Because I don't think that all of those concepts, are generated only by things like capitalism and patriarchal society. But I do think that there are features of our patriarchal capitalistic society that keep that in place. For instance, marketing. Like if you can sell my 46-year-old self some cream because I have wrinkles, you got to be able to sell me on this idea that people that look like me are actually in a group that needs to have these creams. Right? So it's like, it's all interconnected, my friends. So how does this all play back into this idea of personal agency? And why am I bringing up personal agency? Why am I telling you about my feminist background? Well, as I've started to write this book, the more I write the book, the more I can see that really what I'm trying to help us all understand is that our one tool, our one and only tool that we have 100% ability to access, ability to do something with is us. And the only way for us to start and address some of these cultural conditioning, social conditioning kind of things that no longer are serving us is to be able to access this idea of personal agency, that we write the rules, that we are not the object of the subject of culture, that we are a subject in and of ourselves that affects change on everything, on ourselves, on culture, on everything. We have been sold, though, this idea that, the one person doesn't really move the change very much. Like the needle isn't going to move very much if I do something different. And I want to really counter this for you. Okay. I want to really help you understand how, even on a neurobiological or a biological level, that's a very flawed sense of reasoning. If one small cell in our body starts to express DNA in a way that's incorrect, in a cancerous-like way, just that one cell starting to split and kill off other cells in a certain way differently creates malignancy within a system. And that malignancy then can start to spread to other systems. And this is how cancer eventually can kill a human body. So if one cell has the power to do that, then us, an individual within the organism of an almost 8 billion person world, also has the capacity to affect change. Now, could be affected. Cancer is not a good thing, but I give it to you because I think it's a very salient image of what I'm getting at. And so, You too, though, get to affect change and it can spread everywhere. I also am truly of the belief that if each and every one of us were taking care of the one thing that we have 100% control over, us, everybody's taken care of. So I'll say that again. If each one of us takes care of us, there's no other us's that really need care from us. It doesn't mean that we're not interdependent, because we are, which is another element of the work that I do. I do want you to be in connection with other people. It's one of the ways that we generate our own positive chemicals. It's called oxytocin, but it's one of the chemicals in our body that really drives us, that really makes us feel good, that really helps us identify joy in our life, is when we feel connected. So I'm not saying that I want you to be a hyper individualist and go live out in the forest, because it turns out I'm not doing that. I'm not preaching that. I do want us to be in connection. What I want us to understand, though, is that the juice of it all is when we connect back to ourselves. When we have a relationship with ourselves, when we are taking care of ourselves, when we are personally an agent of change within our own life, and we know that when we start with us, that all other things are taken care of, that, my friends, is when it gets really exciting, like super really exciting. That's the kind of personal agency that I'm talking about. So the learn to love your story concept here isn't really talking about that all of us hate our lives, and so I need to help to teach you to learn to love them. The idea here is that I want us to understand how much impact that we have just by starting with ourselves. And this is extremely important with women who have been acculturated, socially conditioned to think differently, to actually think, if I hustle well enough, if I'm doing the things I need to do for other people good enough, that's where my worthiness comes from. Except that here is the internal flaw to that. It exhausts us, like completely exhausts us to do this. And so we hit midlife and you've got a lot of cranky, irritable, disappointed, don't feel like they're living up to their potential women that are also feeling guilty for feeling that way, because they've been socially conditioned to believe that's kind of selfish thinking. And what are you, like, look at your life. It's really good. And look at all the things you've accomplished. Why can't you just be grateful? So then we're running into practices like the gratefulness practice, but from the wrong perspective. We're running into it from the perspective of, I need to better love and understand that my givingness is a good thing and it should be enough for me. What if it wasn't like that, though? What if what I told you is what gratefulness practice is helping you with is to really stay centered in that personal agency of it's not the environment that controls me. It's not the amount of caring I've done on the outside that makes me feel good on the inside. I can be grateful that I am who I am and have what I have and do what I do, but I get to put me first in that, because if I'm taking care of this vessel that takes care of all of those other things, that's when I start to really feel good. And guess what? I feel good. They feel better. All those things that I'm doing now get elevated because I've elevated myself. It's a little backwards, the way that we've been taught to do this. And I really want to help lift people out of this fog that everything that they've been doing is somehow for women is somehow defined, their worthiness is somehow defined by how other people see that. I want you to see it that way. I want you to feel grateful about it. I want you to really love what you're doing. I want you to take care of you, because I know if you take care of you, everybody else starts to be taken care of, because we all have been taken care of if we take care of ourselves, but we also all come out into this world in our best form. So this is kind of the topic. This is the place that I wanted to begin today. And, one of the places that this has been recognizable for me in particular, not my favorite stories about myself, haha, but I figure if I share about my own, how I've come about this, then I give you an opportunity to kind of see and hear something that might resonate for you. So in my life, not news. I'm twice divorced, not news. I'm a single parent, have been most of my parenting life. Um, I really recognize this in how my son and I, who is now 19, how we are evolving in our relationship. So I really was taught this kind of codependent, make everybody else comfortable at your own expense. Don't ever let everybody have to deal with their discomfort. Your caretaking job is to dissipate that discomfort for them. So with kids, that looked a lot like I tried to solve all their problems. They came to me, they talked to me about things. I want to make it better. And to some extent, there's nothing wrong with wanting to do that. However, one of the jobs we have as parents is to also help them learn the skills that they're going to need to be able to pivot and do the things themselves. And one of the ways in which this shows up in my parenting is I don't ever want to be asking of my kids. I don't ever want to be imposing what I want on them. So I will suck that up and do for them. It's the holiday season right now as I'm doing these podcasts. And, one of the ways this shows up is I don't really ask to do holidays on a day that I want to. I usually try to work around. I have two blended families that I'm working within. Now I've got a kid older that has another family because my son has a partner. And so there's all of these aspects that go into this. And I have made it my sole purpose in life to be the most flexible one. So I've never asked, I'd like to do it on Christmas Eve. Never. I don't. And it kicks my butt now at this time of year. And the way it's shown up is I tend to be the parent that's not chosen. I tend to be the parent that, everybody knows she'll be flexible. So nobody ever thinks to work or accommodate around. And you can see where this is going. While I don't think that any of my kids, would mean to harm me, what happens is I feel left out. I feel like I'm not important. And all of that was created by a design. I did that. I was told, as my human giver syndromeness was told to me, I was told I needed to make it comfortable for everybody else. And in so doing, there are parts of me that see that behavior and now interpret that in a way that feels not good for me. It feels like I get left out. It feels like I get overlooked. And I do get left out and I do get overlooked. And I designed it that way. And why did I design it that way? Because I heard from culture that was where my worth would be. All right. So you can see how this plays out. What I was talking about earlier is, I do it that way. And then I end up feeling crummy. But I also now have this other layer of feeling guilty about feeling crummy because I'm not supposed to have any feelings. Because if I'm giving to this idea that culture has given us that I am supposed to be the one that makes it easy for my kids and I shouldn't be asking of my kids, then I feel like I'm not allowed to have the feelings that I'm having. And it's like it just starts coming to you in layers. Can you hear what I'm saying? It's really icky, the place that can leave a lot of us. And so this idea of personal agency is important because if you truly believe in this idea of personal agency, what you understand is, yes, I bought into it, bought it hook, line, and sinker. I designed a life in which I now feel left out at the holidays because I have never given myself permission to ask for what I want. If I start asking for that now, I'm going to look, indignant. I'm going to look, like I'm being pushy, like I'm trying to be, make people feel sorry for me. But all of this garbage in my head about what that looks like if I start to ask for it versus if I just stay in this state of not liking it and feeling left out. I have all of this stuff swimming around in my head. And as you can see, I'm an object that the subject matter is all of those social conditioning, all those rules of life. They're telling me, if you do this, you'll look like this. If you do this, you'll look like this. If you stay the same, all I know is on the inside, I feel crummy about it because I feel left out. And so I'm in this soup of I can't make any change. Look at I'm a victim of my circumstance, right? I created it by design because I was told socially and culturally and by my family system this was the way to go. But I've also created a space now where I don't feel great at the holidays because I haven't set boundaries that say, I am important too. I have value too. I'd like to be accommodated for too. I have no trouble being somebody who accommodates for others. It's not an all or none proposition. And I want to be taken into consideration when you're talking to those other families. I want somebody to call me and say, which day is best for you, mom? Here are the days we're thinking. No one ever does that, but no one ever does that because I designed it that way. And I designed it that way because I was taught that. So now, as all this stuff is swimming around in my head, like I'm not allowed to ask. And if I do, it's going to sound like this and blah, 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 blah. I am stuck in that swirl because I'm stuck being the object of that swirl. I am not taking my own personal agency. I'm not seeing any way out of this where I get to be the subject that responds in a different way, that now sees it all in a different light. Okay, I designed it that way. I was the good little girl. I did what I thought I was supposed to do. And now when my kid is 19, I can see how I designed it in a way that won't feel good for me going forward. And honestly, if it doesn't feel good for me going forward, it doesn't feel great to him either. Because if I am icky, resentful, feeling stuck in this over time, how does that impact our relationship? It will. Whether I want it to or not, whether I'm trying to or impose it on him or not, or just take it inside, I damage myself then. And the version of me that he loves is damaged. It's good for no one if we stay in that spot where we have no personal agency to make a change in our life. So personal agency is at the core of everything I teach because I first need you to see yourself as a subject in your own life, as an individual that can bring a different way of doing things to your life. And in this example, and it's something I'm still struggling with, ladies. This is one of the other reasons I just love putting this stuff out there, like my blogs and this podcast and all of the things is I want you to understand, like, I might know how these things work, but I still am in the same dang soup that we all are because we all grew up in this. And, until we start to see it differently and do things differently, I get stuck in it too. So the way to show up to this differently is to remember, yes, these are the circumstances that I'm in. Yes, this is the soup I'm swirling in right now. And I get to respond to it differently. I don't just have to continue to do as I've been told. I don't even need to choose to feel guilty about doing this differently. I will, because my system is conditioned to feel that way. But there are lots of different tools that I give people on how you start to overcome those icky feelings of guilt when you step out of that codependent cycle and start to name what you want and what you need in relationships and allow people to feel uncomfortable about that. That when I start these conversations, one of the first things I hear my son do, because I've conditioned him to have a codependent tendency too, is, "Oh, I'm sorry, mom." Nope. Nobody needs to be sorry. This was all designed the way that it was. So let me just name that. And what I'm asking for is consideration. As you grow into your adult life, what I'm asking for is to be equally considerated as I am considering you. I still am going to be a really flexible person because the flexibility was never the problem. The problem was that I did it without telling anybody I was doing it. I didn't have an expectation that others would accommodate me. I didn't see my own personal worth. I didn't value my own personal worth. I thought my value was in the flexibility, but the value is in me. And I get to choose flexibility in my personal agency if I want to. That looks different. So what's interesting to me is when you get to the end of this, like people who've worked with me, come to the end, gone through some of the stuff that we've healed through, I've helped support them through. And then they'll say things to me like, "God, Dr. Natalie, it's so interesting because it doesn't look a lot different. Like I'm still accommodating people at the holidays, as it turns out. However, I'm also naming that I want to be accommodated for. And I also feel a change in my system because I didn't, I said that, I named that. I went into a new season of my life where I say, I'll accommodate you and I want to be accommodated for. And all of a sudden, I feel loved and I feel seen and I feel heard in my life, even though I still am the one that comes out on the list where, there isn't so much muck in my family system that I can't accommodate for my kids and do holidays on days that aren't holiday days. I just feel considered by them if I'm starting those conversations. And they're awkward and they're uncomfortable. And if they are awkward and uncomfortable, it means you're doing it right. I promise you, the problem that we have with this idea that it's going to feel better because I'll feel heard and seen. Yeah, eventually. And in the meantime, during change, we're doing it right when we're on our growth edge and we feel uncomfortable about asking for something for ourselves. This is new. This isn't the way that we've been socially conditioned, as the, Dr. Nagowski and Nagowski say. We're not being in our human giver syndrome. We are trying to be an individual that honors our worth. And in honoring our worth, we honor other people's worth because we are saying everybody's worth there's equanimity. It has equal value. But everybody's worth is different and individualized, and everybody's ability to represent that worth is equal, but also individual and diverse in how it shows up. And I want to work within a world where I get to love myself as much as I love my son. Because when I'm doing that, I elevate all of us. I elevate the entire thing. And this is how that kind of thing plays out in real life time. So if any of this sounded interesting to you, keep following me, keep listening to these podcasts. I'm going to keep coming back at you week after week with a little tidbit here or there. You could always go over to the hub at learntoloveyourstory.com. Things there are always changing. However, I want to be there for you. So please come over. And if you don't know already, I offer free group coaching for a year. What? Yeah. So if you haven't joined me for free group coaching, you definitely should go over to learntoloveyourstory.com, click on free group coaching, sign up. I do an in-person Zoom class once a month. So 12 times a year, you're getting me for free, face-to-face, but you also get to join in on my online courses and look at some of my pre-recorded videos and do the workbooks and the journals. And we have an online community where you get to, battle this out with other women just like yourself who are struggling. We're all struggling. I'm struggling. You're struggling. We're all struggling to do this, and having that support together, I think, is such an integral part of that. So please go over to learntoloveyourstory.com, look at all of that stuff, and hopefully there's something there that will help you as well. I am just looking to help women stop denying their own dreams. Stop squelching yourself. Stop participating in these cultural ideas that you are a human giver, and start loving yourself, loving your story little by little, with little bits of, help from anywhere that you can get them, right? Because I know that there is something in there. There's someone in there that we haven't valued the worth of enough. And I want to help you value her worth and have a relationship with yourself, her first, so that you can bring that to the rest of the world. Have a wonderful day, everybody.